All right, well, welcome to PopCultureKind, and our first guest ever is Mr. Martin Yeung. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, we've gotten to know each other a bit over the years, and I found you to be a very interesting and cool guy, inside and outside of collecting, and I thought you'd be a great guest. I've only seen one interview with you, I think, which you shared with me, which wasn't related to movie props. But why don't you give us a little bit of a synopsis of your background outside of collecting, just so people who aren't familiar with you have some context to, sort of know a little about you and your life.
So I'm just kind of a regular guy. Actually, my main job, or at least my main profession, is actually I'm a developer, property developer. So what I do is I develop buildings, condos, resorts, housing, and all the likes. However, of course, every man has it's their inner child, right? And hence why,
Yes.
Despite all the things that I do, I love props. What can I say? I grew up loving movies, pop culture, comics. I guess most men in general probably went through that, at least at our time,
Yeah.
Now it seems that comics aren't so popular anymore. Kids nowadays just have the iPad, from what I see. But so just doing the regular things on a daily basis, work and making sure that I have the balance in life, right? Sometimes it's important to have that balance, And then, of course, one of my passions in terms of balance is really collecting things that intrigue me, or collecting things that really have some type of special feeling. And then for me, props, they really have this uniqueness about them, just because it always triggers a memory of the past. And I think us growing up watching movies, I'm a huge movie buff, of course. And of course, favorite movies, I've probably seen them countless times. You just like to watch them over and over again, just because it just creates that certain type of vibration, right? A certain type of frequency in which you really just get tuned in. And whatever the emotion might be, it has a powerful effect. And that's what I think movies are made to do. And for me, I see movies as pieces of art, because just the entire process of making a movie has so many facets to them. And most people don't realize how difficult it is to make a movie or any type of production. And one of the most important aspects is the prompts. It has to be believable. It has to be, constructed in a way that when people watch it, it seems that it is the real deal. However, with movie magic, it's truly amazing how things are constructed. It's just one of those things where I guess when you have that interest, ever since, when I was a kid until now, it just never disappears. The power of movie magic and what it does to a person. I think it's a wonderful thing, because you grow up always remembering all of those memories that you've had, be it if you're scared, if you like scary movies, or if you like the genre of classical movies, even modern hero, like superhero movies, all the way to movies like Lord of the Rings, that type of genre. It just always has a very, very special type of emotional attachment to wonderful movies that still can compete with movies that are out now. You know, the older movies always have a little bit of a difference, the way I see it. But yeah, that's one of the things that I love to do, and I still continue to do it until this day.
So what did you collect before movie props? Like when you were a kid, what were you into?
So I guess before movie props, one of the first things was definitely comics. So prior to comics, obviously born in Hong Kong, lived there for most of my life. I then lived in UK for a couple of years, and then I studied in the US. So I was able to get at least a very wide range of different type of, I guess, interesting hobbies. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So what
In
what
Hong Kong,
decade
yeah,
like what decade were you collecting comics? Like what was sort of like the key 10 years maybe that you were into that?
I'd say comic books was perhaps, I guess, the early teens, I guess, maybe like around 12, 13 years old. Prior to that, I used to collect cards. Uh, in Asia, one of the most famous cartoons was this cartoon called Dragon Ball. It's still out
Mm.
today.
Oh
However,
yeah.
the original Dragon Ball was, wow, I don't even remember. It must have been when I was still at least maybe like 9 or 10 years old or something like that. And then we used to have these small machines in which you put like $1 and you kind of like turn the knob and then the card comes out. And then the most priceless memories when you're able to get that golden card that has like this glimmering effect. And it was just
Right.
great memories. Then to comics, yeah, that was something special. I think I was introduced to comics the first time when I actually visited the US. I was there for a holiday with family, and then I saw a comic book store. And in Hong Kong back then, there really wasn't any comic book stores. There was one that opened, I guess, towards my later teens, but then the one in the US when I went to visit, this was in LA. It was a huge comic store. I forgot exactly where the location was, and it was a massive shop with comic books everywhere. And of course, I grew up with all of the original superheroes that everyone knows until today. But that moment, stepping into the comic book store, I can never forget it, just because it was so magical. You know, it was like, imagine a young boy, generally into toys and all of the above, but then you see artworks of different type of superheroes and amazing drawings of I guess all of the heroes that you grow up to see and you grow to learn to love. And from there was a time I even collected like toys, superhero toys, kind of like in the same time. One particular brand is actually a Hong Kong brand that became international called Hot Toys.
Oh yeah.
And I think from there it switched into costumes, and the costumes were more replicas. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a market for movie props, believe it or not. I only
So how
found
so how
that
did
out.
how,
Yeah.
yeah, how did you learn about that?
So one of my favorite costumes that I've always been trying to perfect was a specific costume from the movie Troy, Brad Pitt's Troy. And I've actually perhaps worn, different type of, fabrications of the actual costume at least maybe 2 or 3 times. We used to throw a costume party for New Year's, a family event type thing. So all the guests, when they come to the house, everybody's in full costume. And I guess for at least, 3 years of the entire time that we used to do it, I always came in as Achilles. And then one day I was researching, just getting more detailed information about the costume, just trying to make it better. Sometimes you have some costume maker that make it, which is still really, really beautiful, but then you kind of want to improve on it. And then searching through the internet, I came across a website known as Prop Store. And for some reason, they had obviously this, there was a link to their personal collection. And the personal collection obviously had some actual movie props. And I was actually completely shocked, and I was totally unaware that we can actually purchase props online. And I guess to make the long story short is I got in touch with a wonderful gentleman called Stephen Lane, who is the CEO of Prop Store. And the very first prop ever that I purchased was the Achilles sword and shield, the hero sword and shield from Stephen Lane. So
Nice.
mad props to Stephen for selling it to me, who's a very good friend of mine now. And the rest is history. And that's
What
pretty
year
much
was
where
that?
it started. Oh, that must be at least 15 years ago,
Okay.
approximately around that time. And then from there on out, I guess props became one of my primary passions in terms of collecting memorabilia. That's kind of how I
Nice.
got into it. Yeah. Always good
And your
memories. Good
in
memories.
your collection, it's a lot of costumes with like matching like weapons
Mhm.
and stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that I like personally is full costumes. I like to display them, at the entire full glory of how it looks in the movie. And I guess, sometimes when you have a little bit of the OCD, you want to complete everything one step at a time. And it's hard to find things sometimes. So when you get a
Yeah.
piece of armor, it'll take sometimes years to find, a pair of bracers or a pair of shoes or whatever it may be. But then to be honest, that is the fun part of collecting. I guess one of the things that you learn is patience, and networking, getting
Yeah.
to meet wonderful collectors from all over the world. I've met so many people, literally, in places that I would never have dreamed that people would have been interested in this niche hobby. But yeah, it's a special thing. It's really special because, again, meeting people and also having that searching for artifacts type of feel. It's always memorable. And then each prop that I was able to collect kind of became symbolic for me. Symbolic just because of how it was obtained and the person that I got it from, and then subsequently the relationship that was developed with the person that I did get special props from, especially things that I would consider grails. That feeling is just so wonderful. It's such a great feeling to finally be able to get what you've always wanted. Even if it's just a simple prop. It's the little things. It's the little things. But I think every prop collector out there knows exactly what I'm saying and what I'm feeling.
yeah.
When these things happen. So yeah, lots of fun, lots of good memories.
So how did you first go about building your network? Because I think that's something that's really important for collectors, and someone that's not familiar with this hobby might, this might be their first thing that they stumble across, and it's really important to build a network just, to help with authenticity, making sure you're not overpaying for things, a whole variety of reasons. So like, how did that start for you?
So it's actually very interesting, and a great question, by the way. So when I first joined this hobby, I guess around 15 years ago, I was literally completely new, as in I didn't know anybody. The only person that I knew was Steven and Prop Store. And of course, Prop Store, a extremely reputable company and great people, great service. They helped me, of course, obtain a lot of props. And then there were small forums that I remember. Like there was a movie prop forum, if I'm not mistaken, where, you kind of join and you see people kind of displaying their props, or at least talking in certain type of, forums about certain type of movies and stuff like that. And somehow I was led to Facebook. Now, I don't remember exactly when the Facebook forum actually was made, but then it's all of these things, right? Like you meet one person and the person kind of introduces you to a network of other collectors in which they kind of discuss props in general. So I kind of went through the long route slowly by meeting people and, making friendships. But then I guess the way it really started was my search for the next prop. So it's just basically, understanding where to kind of find people that know at least perhaps the whereabouts of the particular prop you're looking for. And the rest is history. So then from there, then to the Facebook forum, you're able to meet a lot of people. But I think the main part is when you meet someone, obviously in the prop world, and you become friends, they introduce you, right, to other people, and they say, you know what, let's say I'm looking for, a prop from a particular movie. And then that new person that I met might know someone that actually has a network that knows someone. So it's really about that bouncing around to find that particular prop. And I guess through that journey, you're able, at least I was able to access a lot of different varieties of different channels and forums where you'll just meet people that have all sorts of different type of interests, all different movies. And it's really about the community. So it's a big thank you to the entire prop community for being so helpful to really allow me to find the things that I wanted, and I'm always grateful for that. I'm always grateful.
Yeah. So when you're looking back at all the things you bought over the years, what percentage would you break down that you bought either, through a private sale or at auction, or maybe a dealer that just puts things on websites, or maybe on a Facebook group? What's been your experience, in terms of that breakdown, and also kind of what's your opinion on those different sort of possibilities, and do you have anything that you prefer over another? Is one more of a challenge, or are you not a big fan of one? Like, kind of what are your thoughts on sort of the marketplace?
So another great question. So from my best recollection, I think everything started mainly through auctions, just in general. And I remember back in the day, PropStar actually also didn't even have auctions yet. And I didn't know profiles in history as well. I didn't even know they existed until a couple of years later when I started getting into this hobby. However, I guess percentage wise, auctions, at least back in the day, were one of those things where you always highly anticipated for it. So this is obviously when I knew about auctions and the different auction houses that sold props, because props were one of those unique hobbies, or at least a unique genres in which most auction houses don't really have that much. It's kind of rare in general.
Yeah.
But then, so auctions, of course, is where I purchased a lot of my props, just because they were able to market and somehow I was able to kind of get in touch with those auction houses, and of course build great relationships with all of them. And then when you're part of the community, even though I'm not very vocal in the community, and I never was, you still meet great people that obviously assist you in finding things that you really like. So realistically speaking, I'd say a majority came from auction, and then at least, well, quite a lot actually, to be honest, especially now, come from other collectors as well. It comes to a point where I think a lot of collectors like myself, when it comes to key props, like things that you really, really want, sometimes it's really not so much about the money. If it just so happens that another collector is also interested, or I have something that they want, it just simply becomes a trade, and we kind of, estimate the value, if it is of a realistic value, assuming it was to be sold on the market, or assuming it was to be sold in an auction. And private sales, yes, of course, a lot of private sales in general, just for other, miscellaneous type of props, or even costumes. And ultimately, the most important thing is trust. I think trust, to be honest, in this world, should always be taken to the highest regard, because without trust, without word of honor, who are we? You know what I mean? Yeah, people, we live all over the world, and sometimes when you're dealing with someone, especially someone that you don't know so well, it initially it'll always be a little bit of a learning curve, right? Have I ever been burned? Yes, I have, but then you learn from that, right? And then from there, you make better networks with, people that I guess are more credible. Not saying that there are many that aren't, but sometimes you learn the hard way. But then I take every lesson positively. I never take it negatively. Just because something bad has happened, you learn from it, and it just makes you wiser. Especially, someone who, when I came into this hobby, I really didn't know much. I didn't really know who was the people to buy from and who are the people that you don't buy from. But then ultimately through that, my knowledge just became so much better, also with making sure that the props have been authenticated. But ultimately, it's about doing your own research. That's really, really important. But yeah, so to be honest, I buy from every platform that's available. But then sometimes you can't find the things that you really want to buy, or you can't find a piece of prop to complete the display. You know what I mean?
Right.
But then it's all been a lot of fun. It's all been a lot of fun, and I still really have fun doing it until today. Now I have a little bit of less time, but then always something kind of pops up that's so interesting and fascinating that that it starts the whole process again. The discussion process of obtaining it, speaking to the person, and all of the above. That's part of the wonderful game that is prop collecting.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite piece or item in your collection?
I do. So remember I mentioned that I started off with the Achilles costume, making it, or having like wonderful costume makers around the world that really can make beautiful replicas, right? Nothing near to the original. Some are actually very, very good. I had one fabricated from an awesome armor maker. His name is Dragon Jonet, or Jonet, however you pronounce it. Wonderful man. I hope to meet him at some point one day, because he's made a lot of wonderful costumes for me, even before I was able to collect. But then finally, I was able to obtain the hero Achilles complete Brad Pitt costume. That was pretty much a dream come true. And, I have to say a big, big thank you to Joe Magdalena, of Profiles in History, but now with Heritage. And he really made my dream come true. Of course, Stephen, for selling me the sword and the shield, I was able to complete the entire set. And this was many years ago. So that's probably my grail of all grails.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how do you display your items?
So I have, interestingly enough, I have a display room at my place. It's kind of hidden away from everything. You know what I mean? So
because you're married,
my
right?
place, yeah, that's right. So then, it's important, because sometimes, especially when when you have these props, it's important to really take care of them. Like, I think temperature is extremely important. Also humidity, all of the above. It's like making sure that, that the room has a certain type of temperature in which, especially those costumes that have the rubber or with latex and all the above, we really need to take care of these things, because some of these are old. I have some props that, are, from the 80s and beyond. So I guess for us prop collectors, it is our duty to take good care of them until the day does come that it goes to another collector's collection and it's still pristine. That's why I like to call them artifacts. I forget who is the one who used that word. I think it was Pop Store, but artifact is really the perfect word, because imagine back in the day, props were worthless, right? They were so cheap that most production houses, after the movie wrapped, they would just literally just discard them, throw them away, and then they didn't have much value, if any at all. And that's why some of these older movie props and costumes, they are literally either impossible to find, or only a very, very few are left in private hands. So it's one of those things. It's like a painting, I guess, right? If you buy like a beautiful painting, you always want to make sure the painting is kept immaculate, just because for your own pleasure, for viewing it and seeing it being at its perfect condition. So yeah. So anyway, so the way I display it, I have a special room that is, again, hidden from everything else, and it's kind of like a bat cave type of situation, right? It's hidden behind a wall. You have like a fingerprint access. So any guests that do come to my place, you wouldn't actually see a prop anywhere at my house. But then for those that know, they say, I heard you have a prop collection. So yeah. So then I can take them there. And it's one long corridor with essentially cubicles. Each cubicle has a full costume inside. And of course, there are others that are outside. But then, sort of like a mini museum, my own personal mini museum type of thing. And yeah, it's fun to see. It's fun to look at every now and then.
So do you use like off the shelf mannequins, or do you have like custom displays made for your costumes?
So I have my mannequins are actually kind of custom made. I have a local mannequin maker who used to make them a lot, but now he doesn't actually focus on it too much anymore, unfortunately. So certain costumes that I do get, especially if they're those really rare costumes, I would go to professional. I'm not sure what you would call those companies. Companies like Block 4, where, or like so specialty companies in which they're able to fabricate the mannequin to really achieve the look of how the costume should be displayed. So the size or the fit, they would literally be able to mimic almost perfectly perhaps the main actor who wore the costume. So they are really tailor-made to perfection to actually have those costumes displayed. And it's really amazing. They really do a good job. But then generally, for the most part, it's kind of more like a generic mannequin. But the generic mannequin that I did have made was made that it would be easy to fit most, if not all, costumes. So not too big and not too small, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, because a lot of the Hollywood guys, even if they're buffed out, they're usually smaller than the typical store-bought mannequin. They're usually a lot bigger than the typical Hollywood star, I found.
Yeah, that's right. And then the thing is that especially some costumes, especially if the actor is a little bit smaller, you don't want to stretch out certain parts, right? Just in case, over time it just kind of damages the costume itself. So it's really about making sure that they're fit in a way that is just right, for longevity purposes. So, yeah.
So what's sort of the one oddball thing in your collection that doesn't really match everything else?
That's interesting. I mean, I guess, for my particular collection, it all has to have a certain type of effect on me. So I guess the movies that I've always loved, the movies that I grew up to. So in a way, the costumes and the props that I have are kind of like symbolic, because it represents perhaps even a part of me, like the person that I am, because, us, as we grow up to these movies, we look at our heroes with admiration, right? For the things that they were able to do in the movie. I mean, again, like Achilles, the greatest warrior, it just gives, that inspiration to really just be the best that you can be in whatever it is that you do. Gladiator, Maximus, another great inspiration just because of his heroic type of mentality, the loyal soldier, the one who always will represent goodness. These things are just things that kind of motivate me. So when you see my collection, it's just, I guess it's symbolic for me that it makes me want to be more like that, in the real world per se. You know what I mean? So the oddball one,
Sounds like you've been really disciplined.
Yeah, that's
focused.
that's part of, sometimes it's important, especially, when you are, at least for what I do, it's important that discipline, in everyone's life. I'm not saying that everyone has to be. It works for me. I like to live a very disciplined lifestyle. I go to bed early, I wake up extremely early, and I have a very basic routine life, but in a good way, because it allows me to be as efficient as I can be. So yeah, I guess when you're talking about the heroes that I grew up to, I mean, even like, superheroes like Batman, for example, Batman and Bruce Wayne, the hero that fights crime, yet as Bruce Wayne, he's also that businessman, right? The businessman that extremely confident, also extremely good, takes care of his people, all of the above. It's they all have a wonderful story to them. Now, going back to your question, the oddball one, which I perhaps find extremely fascinating, is I was recently fortunate enough to acquire the Beetlejuice house from the original movie Beetlejuice. This is from Heritage Auctions. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there's only maybe one or two that still remained, in private hands. So I find that a very, very lucky and great score. I was happy to actually get that. The oddball is because, when I say that most of my props kind of represent at least the person who I always aim to try to become. In other words, to be better, right? To do more good, just like what most heroes do. I just love that inspiration. I mean, like Alexander, for example, an idol of mine. I was able to obtain his full costume. In fact, you kind of see him on that side, the helmet. Alexander from worn by Colin Farrell. So the Beetlejuice is one of my favorite movies as well, just because it was so well made. The story was so quirky, and it was just one of those funny yet strange yet awesome. I don't know. I mean, I guess okay, that represents a little bit of me, right? Strange as well. I could be strange, But then, yeah, it's other things like that. I don't really have too many very, very unique props, but that's perhaps one of the ones that I do really, really love. And it's just a simple house, but then when I look at it, it just always reminds me of that feeling of, when you watch Beetlejuice, the intro, and when the camera kind of goes in the the model all the way from the very beginning. It just always brings back that memory, because I believe when I first watched it, still pretty young, but then it had that very unique type of borderline, not, I wouldn't say scary. Of course, when you're younger, certain things can be a bit scary, but fascinating is probably the better word. Just because, especially, Tim Burton, the way he does his movies, the way he shoots and films them, a true genius. Yeah. So it's interesting.
So is there,
it's really interesting.
Is there a prop that got away? Like either you didn't know about it and it sold, or, for some reason you maybe hesitated and then regretted it later?
There always have there has been a few prompts that kind of got away, and then when I thought about it, it's like, oh, should I have traded it, or should I put it in auction? But ultimately, I always I believe that there's no such thing as coincidences. I believe everything is destiny. So the prompts that came and the prompts that left were meant to be. Just because when they did leave me, however way it left me, if it was again through auction or through a trade or through a private sale, it enabled me to get the next better item, better in for me only. In other words, something that I wanted more than the one that I let go. So regrets, I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. You know what I mean? But yeah, so I don't really dwell too much in the past. The present, as I always say, is a gift. Meaning, so the position where I am, the things that I'm able to get, and the things I'm also tentatively going to acquire. Yeah, it's all been part of that amazing journey, because again, through even sales, I was able to meet wonderful people that then connected me to another source or connected me to a different auction house. And it's always been such a blessing, to be honest, right? Just to meet new people that also have the same type of interests. And I really enjoy that. I enjoy meeting people, like-minded people, and then we can talk about, props. I mean, despite how geeky it sounds, what can I say? I'm the ultimate geek. You know what I mean? That's just what I am. I love these things, and then even just a discussion of how it was made, how it was fabricated, how props were put together, the magic behind it. It really takes a lot of effort. And to all the prop makers out there, I tell you, salute, because they are geniuses. They are literally artists. I mean, can you imagine? I'll tell you, Jason, that, when you see it, right? You've held so many props over the days, especially when you're at Julian's and perhaps even in the past. You hold that prop, and I would have no idea how in the world they're able to fabricate something so amazing like that, And what's even more amazing is that when put on screen, wow, it just becomes magic. The prop becomes magic. It just looks so much more real, so much more believable. And that's part of the the amazing admiration that I have for these artifacts, these unique artifacts that I have today still,
So what's the one grail? Like, what's the one thing you would just love to have?
Well, so many, I guess, really. I mean, I guess in terms of grails, I was very, very fortunate to be able to get a lot of my grails already. However, you know how it is, right? People always say, these pop collectors say, yeah, I've got everything I want, I'm done. And if something else kind of comes up, you're like, oh, darn, I want to get that one, And the problem is now I'm kind of lacking space. Believe it or not, my place is relatively big, but then, one of my friends, a guy called Justin Holt, another collector, great guy. Yeah, he taught me this saying, champagne problems, my friend. Champagne problems. So I guess that's what it is, right? So sometimes, even though when things become too packed and there's something just so special, and I do get the opportunity or blessing that I'm able to obtain it, then I guess I have to fit it somewhere, or I would have to then let go of something just to fit it in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then so grails I really want to get. There have been, for sure. I sometimes I miss the train, where they've had auctions. One of my favorite genres until today, of course, as the ultimate geek, is the fantasy genre. I've always loved the fantasy genre, and what movie, or at least movies of the fantasy genre, can top Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I love that movie. Peter Jackson, again, what a genius and what a piece of art, the trilogy and beyond. I was never able to have the opportunity to score some Lord of the Rings, armors or swords or stuff like that. But
Right.
never say never, right?
Right. They're out there.
Yeah, they're out there. Nothing is impossible to him who tries. A quote from Alexander the Great.
Mm-hmm.
So just be patient. I would say just be patient. At some point, something's going to come out, or through the network of friends that I have, they'll say, "Oh, by the way, this guy has this. You want me to kind of reach out? Do it, please." You know what I mean? It's just that fun part. It's just really, really a lot of fun. Kind of teaming up with like-minded people and friends, and then being able to score, a certain girl that you've always wanted. And it's just a fun process, I feel like a kid every single time things like this happens. And then of course I've always been extremely thankful to everybody who has basically helped me get the props that I've wanted. And ultimately that's fellowship, and fellowship really becomes friendship. And then I've been friends with so many people like yourself, of course, Jason, for so many years now. And I'm always thankful for that. I'm grateful for the people that I've met, as I've mentioned, and the friends that I've made throughout this entire 15 years of collecting. Despite not meeting many in person, we speak a lot over Messenger or any other chat format in Zoom or FaceTime. And it's always fun, especially when auctions come out and when the auctions are there. It's such an amazing feeling when you're discussing certain props, making sure that it's authentic and double checking everything, and then doing your homework, studying it, screen matching, all of the above. It's, it sounds tedious, especially for people that don't know too much about this field, but it's actually part of the fun. And the moment that you're able to screen match something, victory, like, yes, that's it. You know what I mean? But it's really, really interesting. It's a lot of fun,
Yeah. So what's coming up that you're excited about? I know there's this show with people that swung swords around called, I think, Game of Thrones. I don't know if you've heard of that TV show or not.
Game of Thrones, huh? Doesn't sound so familiar, but yeah, that is going to be a big one. That's going to be a big one. I think there's going to be a lot of interest, and it's one of those things, right? Game of Thrones, to me, probably one of the best series of all time, despite, of course, the finale. Season 8 was a little bit unfortunate. However, it's just one of those things. I think even just like the main theme song, everybody in the world must know of it. Literally. I mean, can you imagine like when new episodes, would air, and people have been waiting for it with so much anticipation that when the theme song plays, people are just like rejoicing because they can't wait to find out what happens. So the writers and the story makers of Game of Thrones, wow, what an amazing job that they did. Truly amazing. So that one I'm definitely going to be part of as well. Of course, I have a feeling that prices perhaps might go extremely high just from the way I see it, just because of the interest. I mean, I think Game of Thrones was able to capture the hearts of almost every age group, almost every age group. And then since the time that it aired, and now even the young people during the time, perhaps now are business owners or, business leaders, and, are able to kind of have a little bit more fun while the auctions actually take place, but then, I think at the end, when you actually look at it, just like any other costume or any other prop, you can see how well made they are. The armors, especially for the Game of Thrones auction, even just the photos, they are literally as good as they looked in the series. Like jaw dropping, right? And it's amazing. And I guess for me, one of the things that I always love is armors, just because they're so grand. The concept of the warrior, the fighter, the protector, the crusader, all of the above, it just makes it one of those really powerful figures, especially when the armor is worn, and I really like that. I really like that. What do you think of Game of Thrones, the auction? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of wondered because I assumed it was going to happen at some point, and and now it's here, and I think it's pretty awesome. I think it'll do really well, and it's a great opportunity for people who are fans of that show to get something that was used on that show. And the thing I like about auctions like that is that it brings new people into the hobby, because there's probably a lot of people that have no idea this hobby exists. They'll see something on the news about this auction, and then that brings more people in, which I think is a very good thing. So I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a very interesting thing that you said, because even until today, the prop hobby is not as well known as most people would think. In fact, I've had a lot of guests also, like, when they come to the house and I show them the props, they say, "Oh yeah, it's really, really cool. These costumes are amazing." But then, like one of my friends was saying that, it's their costumes, and I told him, yeah, this value is X amount, and then to them they're like, "What? You paid X amount for that, the costume?" It doesn't resonate. However, for those that know, sometimes some of these props are just priceless, just because of the nostalgia that it brings. And it's all about that. It's all about that memory. The moment you look at a certain prop, it brings back that memory. The memory of I guess when we were younger, even if we were like children or teenagers or whatever age it may be, it's that special moment that when we saw the movie for the first time, and when you see the prop or costume, you remember that moment. And I guess in life, everything is about the memories. It's all about the memories, right? It's just like a photo.
Yeah.
A photo or a video that you may take. The moment that you look at a certain photo, it'll bring back the memory, the wonderful memory, the good and the bad. I mean, maybe some props can also bring back that sadness, like, for example, Gladiator, the sadness of when Maximus, I hope no spoilers, for those who haven't seen it. If you haven't seen it, watch it. 10 out of 10. Ridley Scott, you can't go wrong. But, at the end, right, when he didn't, when he actually passed, it was emotional, right? In fact, even when I watch it until today, that ending, when he goes back to the family, it's poetry, and you just remember that. Even just like the scene where his hand is kind of just floating above the grass with a soundtrack, the iconic Gladiator soundtrack. If I'm not mistaken, the name is We Are Free, right? We Are Free. Amazing. It's all a part of it. It's all part of the construction of making a movie, where literally you're putting the right scene, the right frame, the right angle, and everything, all the above, and you're cueing the music. That's what brings out that certain very special frequency, right? That just connects you to the movie, to that scene. And it's powerful. It's really, really powerful, at least for me.
Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, Martin, thank you so much for being my first guinea pig on this new YouTube series. I really, really appreciate it. And
it's an honor.
No, I just really respect you, what you do in life, what you do as a collector, how you just go through life. You're just a super positive guy. And, I really appreciate you participating in the show.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, Jason. Really, I mean, to be the very first on your podcast, it means a lot. It really means a lot. So thank you very much.
Cool. Well, thank you. And we'll do it again sometime in the future too.
Yeah. Sounds good. We'd love to. So awesome. Jason, thanks again. Thanks as well for everything.
All right.
And thanks for all the help. I tell you, if people didn't know I got a lot of amazing stuff through Jason as well. He is, I tell you, stand-up gentleman that more people should really contact him, because his knowledge of props is legendary. So thank you very much, Jason, for all the good times and all the good props I was able to get from you. Massive thank you to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Martin. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
All right.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
Until next time.
Cool.
Take care. Bye.